challenges, and we inherit that. We're working our way through a sometimes very dysfunctional social situation. How do we go beyond that? And alchemy provides a kind of map of the terrain toward getting beyond fear and anxiety and the kinds of reactive emotional modes that we inherit and that are intrinsic in us. So that's what's being transformed.
So, Dr. Versluis, you've got a new book coming out, and tell us a little bit about that. What in the research that I've done, it's pretty much in alignment with a lot of the other previous books that you've published. So, what is this one all about?
Well, this one is Alchemical Lightwork, a guide to creating cultures of light and spiritual awakening, which
Hmm.
is a way of introducing the subject of alchemy as spiritual practice. And I published in this area before. I published back in 1999. I published a book on Christian theosophy, and then also in 1994. And both of these books included the discussion of spiritual alchemy, but in the intervening time, I started to work with a practitioner of alchemy, and so we have worked together for many years. And this book comes out of that. So it's an application of inner alchemy or spiritual alchemy to individual life, personal development, community, and couples. So there are some illustrations in the book that are rare. In fact, they've never been published before. And they show a man and woman, or a king and queen, going through different alchemical stages. So the first part of the book is about spiritual development. The second middle part of the book includes some discussion of couples, and then finally community. And this has not really been done before. This
Hmm.
kind of application to the contemporary world and the situation in which we all find ourselves in a technological
Right,
environment.
right.
All these things that we're facing, this book provides a application of alchemy too. And alchemy is the process of spiritual transformation or transmutation. So it involves going through different stages, and alchemy provides us with a kind of map for those stages. So that's really in a nutshell what the book is about.
Hmm. So, alchemy, for our listeners who are not familiar with that, I mean, alchemy has always been um, construed as some sort of magic and spells and things like that. And that's all TV and movies and books and things like that. How, in your mind, do do you talk with your the people that you work with, and as far as who are unfamiliar with this? How do you explain it to them? I mean, is it something that are they rituals that people go through when you're talking about couples and business, or is it just a way of life?
It's a process. The better
Mhm.
term would be process.
All
And
right.
alchemy, traditionally, there's a history to alchemy that goes back to at the very latest early Christian period, what's called
Hmm.
sometimes late antiquity. But the period of antiquity includes some reference to alchemy, and I draw on some of the writings from that period, including an alchemist very famous in that period, whose name was Zosimos, and he had some alchemical visions. And then later, I also draw on a text all the way through the book, really, called the Emerald Tablet. And both of these are really classical references for the alchemical process, which is a process really of spiritual awakening in the way that it's discussed, in the way it's practiced in this tradition. But you're absolutely right. Most people associate alchemy with working with minerals, turning lead into gold, for
Right.
example.
Exactly.
The idea of gaining riches, the idea of the philosopher's stone, this mysterious uh, substance slash object, the philosopher's stone as the means of ultimate transmutation, and the goal at the same time. All of these kind of mysterious things are there in the tradition, and it's filled with riddles and exotic, unusual
Hmm.
symbols, and it's very dreamlike, and so it's hard to make sense of it.
Right.
And in this book, what I do is organize the book around the Emerald Tablet, which is a very, very short alchemical text. So each chapter has one epigraph from the Emerald Tablet, so very short. And it discusses this process of spiritual awakening, which goes from black, the dark stage, or the stage of dealing with your shadow, as it's sometimes called,
Hmm. Right.
to white, which is a stage of illumination, the light emerging. Then there's the yellow, or citrinitas, the golden, and finally the red. So these are the colors that are associated with the process in these various many texts and illustrations. So what hasn't been done a great deal is apply it to spiritual practice. And there is a tradition of doing that. It's one of
Hmm.
the forms of alchemy. The other forms of alchemy include working with plants. So you have alchemists who extract tinctures from plants. Some
Hmm.
alchemists work with metals. There's a tradition of that also in India, working both in Europe and in India, of working with metals in order to purify the metals. But then there's also this tradition of spiritual alchemy, and that's the one that really this book draws on primarily.
Okay. So in turn then, in the spiritual aspect of it then, what is what is being transformed?
Well, in the context of this book, it's at foundational level, it's us.
Hmm.
Because we find ourselves in the modern world really, because it's such a materialistic society that we live in, and this is true for virtually everyone, we don't
Hmm.
really have a way of orienting ourselves very well, because
Right.
many people, there's a significant number statistically that are have left their particular organized religion, the inherited religion. That's statistically happened. People, even within religious traditions, there might be an alchemical tradition in it, as there is in Christianity, but people have never heard of it. So we have very few ways of orienting ourselves. And in a more universal way, and alchemy provides that because it allows us to see. So what is it that it allows us to see? Well, the first thing is the challenges that are in the stage called Negredo, or the black. The black stage is really dealing with our baggage. And so one way this is referred to in the tradition is uh, unpacking or unburdening ourselves of our baggage, because we all come with a great deal of baggage and challenges, and we inherit that. We're working our way through a sometimes very dysfunctional social situation. So, how do we go beyond that? And alchemy provides a kind of map of the terrain, a map toward getting beyond fear and anxiety and the kinds of reactive emotional modes that we inherit and that are intrinsic in us. So that's what's being transformed in essence in this tradition.
Hmm. So is this done through as like, through meditation, or is it done through, like some sort of a talk therapy? Or is there physical things that people have to do for this to work on them?
Well, for this particular book, we've created a course which is it's created for a nonprofit. So any money that comes in from the course, and it's not particularly expensive, but any funds that come in go to the nonprofit. And the name of the course is Alchemical Lightwork Gathering Light. And the course is directly tied to the book. So the different
Hmm.
sections of the course, online course, are providing different practices tied to or connected to the book itself. And it's one of what we envision as at least two or three courses. But the practices, the fundamental practice is contemplative. So it's pulling ourselves away from our distractions and our social media and all the things that pull our attention away
Right.
and turning our attention inwardly. And the fundamental practice, there's a clinical psychologist who's also uh, worked with us with his wife for many years, and he and I did a book together in the past, and we called Conversations in Apocalyptic Times. And we have another book coming out which goes into much greater depth about the practices,
Hmm.
but fundamentally, the practice that he presents, which is also draws on Orthodox Christianity, is invoking the light, uh, calling on the light. Invoking the light is the really the essence of the practice within this particular tradition, which goes back to about 1600 in the way that we're discussing it in this book.
Hmm. So the idea then is, well, that people will be able to traverse the the chaos in the world, and the some of the frustrations and the anxiety that they're feeling. Is that kind of the what if they go through the course, what's going to change in them, or how is the benefit for them going to be?
Well, the course, the way it's set up, is not directly necessarily tied to any specific tradition because alchemical practices can be found in many different traditions.
Hmm.
So you have this is fundamentally a Christian tradition within uh, uh, what's called Christian theosophy, but it at the beginning in late antiquity was Hermetic and centered on Hermes. And whether it's Hermes or whether it is Christian, so it could be Hermetic, could be Christian. It depends on the individual, which tradition you are from, and what you feel most comfortable with. But the practices are intended to strengthen and to purify and to ultimately reveal our fundamental nature, which is of light. And that's so it's a tradition, uh, including different practices that moves toward illumination or freedom. So the goal
Hmm.
is ultimately freedom from these kinds of things that we're talking about that
Hmm.
really form the challenges in our contemporary world. And I think will only become more intense as, for example, if we imagine AI taking, say, 50% of jobs. Uh,
Right.
you see the development of what's called universal basic income. Uh, what do people do? What do you do with your life? I mean,
Right.
this is going to become more of a question for us, not less of a question. Where do you find meaning in life? What is meaning? And so there are different aspects of the course that address this and connected
Mm,
also to nature, because AI, as an example, is really entirely disconnected from the natural world. And virtual
right.
reality, should it be created in the way um, meta, and I give some sardonic remarks about meta as not being very meta, really, because creating a virtual reality is really completely separating ourselves from nature and from the realm of the spirit.
Hmm.
So how do we restore those connections? And that's what alchemy is really about. It's about
Right.
restoring our connections in order to begin to establish more authentic culture, because we live in a society, but most of us don't really live in a culture. And by culture, I mean a, a tradition that integrates nature and spirituality and the human
Hmm.
world in an integrated way. We don't really have that, and you certainly don't have it in an a projected artificial reality that's
Right.
somehow created by AI. So this is in some respects going in the opposite direction, if you will,
Hmm.
of many of these changes in order to help to restore a deeper connection to the natural world and to ourselves, really,
Hmm.
and the
Well,
realm of spirit.
I think it's akin to because this has been a progression as far as with the if you look at the culture of gamers who are totally engrossed in that environment, that world, and they have slowly, many of them, not all, have slowly disconnected from the connectedness of a person to person. And you can see it in their mannerisms. You can hear it in the way that they communicate with someone other than a gamer, because it's almost like it's like a new language was born. And
That's
I
right.
saw the same thing when, there was a big push for the meta in the virtual world, and then I think to some degree, people are like, well, yeah, it's kind of fun for a while, but it's still kind of in that infancy stage, which how do you foresee that from your point of view? Do you see the virtual world where somebody is just sitting in their on their couch with a headset on their head, and do you really foresee that as being the direction that our society as a whole is going?
Well, it certainly exists, and I
It does
mean,
exist, yes.
I mean, I know people just as you do who
Hmm.
are immersed. I know someone immersed in the gaming world who he rarely comes out of his apartment. He's just completely immersed,
Hmm.
really, for most of his waking life in a non-existent world of gaming.
Hmm.
That's a fact. There is there was an article recently in the Wall Street Journal about, can you have a romantic relationship with an AI, and this with an AI agent, and this is happening. People are
Yeah.
developing. I mean, I
Yeah.
know someone who transferred from a human coach to a AI coach. Uh,
Hmm.
this happens, and it's unprecedented in human history. And of course, uh, I'm not saying that this kind of technology. Obviously, we're talking on technology. I have an apparatus here so we can talk. This
Right.
microphone and this preamp and all this stuff, and it's amazing. It's amazing we can do this. At the same time, we need to remain grounded in
Hmm.
nature and in who we really are, because it's very easy for us to be pulled out of ourselves into the technology. And I'll give
Right.
you an example of this. I sometimes have given meditation workshops. I've done it at the university that I teach at, and I had about 200 students in one of those workshops, and we were talking uh, early on. This was just kind of getting to know where they were at, and I asked them some things about where they're at and what they were feeling, and I asked them about some of the statistics concerning depression and anxiety among college students. Now there were some staff and there were some faculty there, but it was almost all students, and they told me, "Yeah, it's true. It's really true. Depression is really a problem.
Hmm.
Anxiety, fear, really problems that they are facing." I said, "Well, where does that come from?" And many of them said that it came from social media. It came
Hmm.
from their
Right.
sense of insecurity because friends are posting stuff that's false about
Hmm.
themselves or kind of misleading about how
Right.
great their lives are. And then they feel terrible. And then they post something false. And then they feel
Hmm.
more terrible. And it's this weird cycle that's outside ourselves in some sense. So,
Right.
how do we turn our attention back? I mean, I'm I've taught introductory, workshops like that. I've been engaged in meditation for, many years. And so I want to give some of that um, to students to help orient them. And the purpose of this book is really to provide a larger map of the process
Hmm.
of how how you can envision it, and how it's envisioned in a tradition that goes back thousands of years and
Right.
has analogs in India, in Hinduism. It has analogs in Tibetan Buddhism. There's alchemy in Tibetan Buddhism. There's alchemy in Western Europe. There's alchemy in China, Taoist alchemy.
Hmm.
And there's spiritual alchemy within Chinese Taoist tradition. So there's many different forms of this, and this book primarily draws on Europe because that's what I'm most familiar with, and in terms of alchemy. And so it gives a kind of overview of a spiritual path that isn't mine. It's not my
Hmm.
invention. It's
Right.
it's rather I'm conveying something in hopes that it will help orient people and at least allow them to see that there is a process that exists also in European tradition. So this is what the book is in part about. It's about many things. It has many layers actually.
Right. So here's my concern when I look at some of the things that you've just mentioned is people like you and myself, in other words, our generations and such, I'm not really that concerned about. It's a very small percentage of people that have um, taken up the virtual, the meta type of world and such. They're there, but it's a small percentage. But what I do see is I see these very, very, very young generations who are completely engrossed in it. Completely. They don't even know that there is anything else other than the technology. And it's all been designed that way. We all know that. I mean, there's
Yeah.
been enough, leaks and um, people coming forward saying, "Hey, listen, this is not good. This is bad." And then now we've added AI onto it now too, which makes it even more stealthy because it knows exactly what to say. It knows what to do.
Yeah.
It's actually very scary. So you're talking about bringing back, bringing forward because it's still there. The idea of reconnecting with, basically with the universe, reconnecting with the earth, reconnecting with your fellow human beings on like a real, like almost a touch basis where, so that to feel whole. And I completely agree with you. But how do we reach these generations that don't know any difference? So we know the difference because we've had it and such, and then we see all this stuff getting in our way and such, and we're constantly pushing technology out of the way. It's like, no, 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 no. And so we know that difference. We have that contrast in our minds and in our bodies. Younger generations, they don't have that. And their parents haven't instilled that in them. They just kind of like, well, that's just what they do, or and we're already seeing as you mentioned, we're already seeing the drawbacks of it with, the higher depression rates, higher suicide rates, and such.
Yes,
Those are through the roof now, for the very reason what you just said.
that's right.
And how do we get through that technology to those younger generations? Because
Well,
I'm
that's
I'm about the long term. I'm like, okay, I said, I know how we can fix this right now, or fix to a certain degree, but these technology companies, they're thinking 10, 20 years ahead. It's like, how do we draw them into the future that we want, that we want to design?
well, that's right. It's really a question, and I think there are different answers to it. One, of course, is what we're doing right now. We're talking about these things. We're reflecting on it. Uh, this book is intended to reach, a broader audience and to give
Hmm.
people an introduction that is not academic. It's not, uh, you know, uh, super abstruse. It's grounded in daily life and in transformation and in the natural world, and that's visible in the way the book is set up. The Even the cover reflects on this because there are so many illustrations that are just amazing in the alchemical tradition. This is the cover. You can see the sun in the cover of this book.
Hmm.
The sun on the landscape, that's called Splendor Solace, which is a magnificent alchemical series, and that's there in order to draw people into it. There's also a book that I did that's coming out right about now, which is called Breaking Through the Materialistic Deception. And that book is really an exploration of how pervasive materialism is in our society. Until I wrote that book, I really didn't grasp how deep it goes because we take it really for granted. Um, it's part of, like, it's like air or like water to a fish. We're just surrounded by materialistic assumptions, and it
Hmm.
is pervading the academic world. Um, I have the same concerns you do about how to reach people. Uh, right now, I'm writing books and giving podcast conversations and discussions, and doing different things to try to draw people's attention to the fact that, first, we live in a totally materialistic society that really gives us very little room to get out of it. Um,
Right.
it's much more pervasive than we realize at first. So breaking through the materialistic deception, it's like breaking through a kind of shell that surrounds us. And
Hmm.
that's the first step. Alchemical light work gives us the process, it gives us a map. Um, it shows us that something is possible that's really extraordinary if we draw on these traditions and begin to manifest them in our lives. That's actually possible. And so I think this will only become more um, vital as time goes on. How we overcome the challenges of addictive technology. Ultimately, it's going to be up to people to wake up, to
Hmm.
begin to separate themselves from it, to step back from it, to see, like my students, at this workshop, they uh, one thing I did at this workshop was I asked them how often do you have your phone around you? Do you keep your phone with you at night? And a lot of these people said, yeah, I keep my phone in my room. This is how I see my Instagram
Yeah.
feed, right? Or
Hmm.
my TikTok or whatever. And I said, well, let's try this one step. Don't leave your phone in your bedroom. For this time until our next workshop, don't put your phone in your bedroom. Keep it outside your bedroom. Keep it or shut it off or put it somewhere else. And so they did. The majority of them did try. And they kind of sheepishly said, yeah, I did it for like a day, you know, but they did do it. And
Yeah.
so it is, that was their idea, really.
Hmm.
It came out of their conversation, their what things that they said. I was the vehicle for manifesting it in this conversation, but it came out of what they said. And were they able to do it? No, no, they weren't. Um, One guy said, "Yeah, I couldn't get rid of my phone, but I put my computer out of my room."
Yeah. So, so after the withdrawals went away, did any of them
uh,
notate that there was actually they felt more at ease? I mean, were any of them able to do this for
Not
24
really.
hours?
Not, yes, for 24 hours, yes.
Hmm.
But for, as a longer term thing, what I'm doing is planting seeds. I'm
Sure, I
pointing them
understand.
toward these things and saying, this came out of our conversation. What do you think about that? And so, sometimes I've encountered people in a coffee shop or somewhere, years later, and they say, "Oh, wow, that really had an effect, actually." Not initially, but it dawned on me. So you never know. You
Right.
just never know
Hmm.
um, where it's going to have an effect
Right. I
and
mean,
how. You know. So I'm actually optimistic. I think we have to go through some of the things that are still coming. But a lot of this book is for what's on the other side. What's on
mhm,
the other
mhm.
side? How do you go to the other side and what's on the other side? And that's part of
Right.
what this book is about.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
sometimes I've found that just by letting people know that they have other options, because you don't know what you don't know. It's like, there's another way you could do this. You're not feeling great. There's instead of taking a pill, you could do this, or instead of taking a drink, you could do this. Find the root cause. Get away from, because our culture is very much about just manage the symptom, not the root cause.
that's true.
And so what I've done with a lot of my clients, in the past is, let's not worry about how you're feeling as much as what's making you feel that way. I said, let's go back and it is sometimes it's something, that's so deep and so hidden that they don't even realize it because it's been there all this time. But
That's right.
again, and this is generally going to be, again, I work with more people that of our generation. But as far as with the younger generation, it's I already know where the seed was planted, and the idea is to stop putting the fertilizer on it because it will grow exponentially. I've yet to figure out a way, unless you actually just take them right now, no matter what age they are, and just parents just toughen up and just say, I'm going to put rules on your phone usage. And I know some that have done it, with their younger kids. So I'm going to put rules on it. You know, you can't have it during these hours, or you can only, or they limit it to a 2 hour period, like watching a movie. It's like, okay, yeah, you can either watch a movie or you can have the phone. You know, and this
Right.
idea that, parents are giving their kids phones at 5, 6 years old. Is, oh, I just want to know where they're at. I said, well, that's a conditioned. You've been conditioned to be fearful. And,
That's
what
true.
you think may happen does happen, but the odds are so slim. So
That's
what if they
right.
have an emergency? Well, what kind of emergency does a 5-year-old have, or a 7-year-old have? They fell out of a tree. Well, you limp home. It works.
Yeah. Well, I have heard that there are some spontaneous college student no tech weekends or no
Okay.
tech days. I've heard of that happening now. I
Mhm.
haven't heard of that in the past, but within the last year, I've heard of it. So those kinds of things definitely uh, can emerge, and I think will inevitably emerge. And right now, actually, I'm teaching a course uh, where one of the first things I ask the students is, how have you used AI in your courses up to now?
Hmm.
This is a college course. How do you use AI? And it's really interesting. Uh, there's a lot of self-awareness, actually. They have a lot of self-awareness about it and about uh, the what happens when you start to become dependent on it. Because this is one of the things that happens with technology is we become dependent on it. And the dependence then atrophies some of our natural human abilities. So, for example, if I rely on AI in order to do all my editing, then that editing function that I naturally have atrophies because the AI
Right.
is doing it. If I
Right.
rely on the AI to write, that natural ability I have to write atrophies because I'm relying on the AI to do it. And
Hmm.
this is like an iron law, really. So we have to be aware of how to address that uh, ourselves. And by we, I mean all of us who, in any way, are using these technologies. And so we have to move through this period where we are all, to a large extent, immersed in these things, immersed in assumptions that we don't even question. We're not
Right.
even aware. We're not even aware of a lot of our assumptions, you
Right.
know? And so, how do we begin to break through that? And that's what breaking through the materialistic deception is about, because it calls into question a lot of assumptions that we don't even think about. Then uh, the process of breaking through, the process of spiritual awakening has an overall map. And that overall map is there certainly in the alchemical tradition. And so I'm pointing towards it as a way for people to understand that this exists, that
Hmm.
there is something different than what we're
Right.
talking about, that there are traditional ways of working with ourselves, beginning to understand ourselves more deeply, understand the
Hmm.
natural world, and understanding that what we think of as nature is not simply a collection of objects. It's not just resources. That's the language we use, in the modern world. So you have natural resources. It's a collection of objects to be exploited. Well,
Right.
yeah, that's true. You can see it that way and produce a lithium mine. Uh, However, it's also the case that behind and inside the natural world, are great mysteries. And those mysteries involve the spirit and the spiritual realm that is also visible through nature. And so we need to begin to reorient ourselves to recognize that, because that's the path to beginning to uh, see the world in a different way and to not participate in the same way in this system, this exploitive
Mhm.
system that we find ourselves in. And the answer is not dialectical materialism, because what is dialectical materialism? It's another form of materialism. It is
Right.
not the answer. But people don't even realize that the basis of many, really the bulk of the political movements that exist in contemporary society on the right or the left, but especially the left, are materialistic. And their
Mhm.
parameters are so limited that they keep us from seeing the bigger picture. So that's something that I'm trying to point out in this book and to explore. And in the course is also what I call co-exploration, meaning that this course and the other courses on this Institute website uh, are intended for people to explore, not to, it's not just one way transaction of, one way downloading. It's rather, here's something you can do, here's a text to come to understand, here's a set of images or an image, and you want to work with it in a different way. It's academic, contemporary academic approaches tend to be deliberately materialistic and separate us from the subject matter so that it becomes external to us. And so, what I'm doing here is bringing it back into our lives and then co-exploring with people. So it's very exciting, actually.
Yeah,
It's
so I
a
was doing a little bit of research on the Helios Institute earlier today, and this is everyone should check these guys out. It's really amazing. So I'm going to read a brief description of what they are. And it says, we recognize that the sacred is not quantifiable. I love that. And not identifiable only with non-theistic or non-monotheistic texts, but rather emerges from what's been termed numinous or mystical experiences. And such experiences may occur in dreams or in other ways and are central to many esoteric practices. That's amazing. And I mean that alone, I started delving deep and I'm like, ooh, this is a rabbit hole. For me, for somebody who thinks like me, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be fun. So there goes my afternoon today. And that's going to be really fun. And it's some spectacular work that's being done there. And I love it. And this is a nonprofit, as you said earlier. And this is where your courses are found, correct?
That's right. Institute. Uh, and it includes also some video conversations that we've done,
Cool.
various things. It's a site in process. It continues to develop, and it's been a great joy to be involved in these kinds of things and to develop friendships and connections through this. I appreciate your drawing that quotation from it. I think it
That's very nice.
reflects very well what what we're aiming to do in this
Hmm.
website, and as we continue to develop it.
So let me ask you this. Uh, what is your view, or how do you see the world? Do you see the world as a pessimistic or as an optimistic type of worldview
Well,
today?
I would say both,
Yeah.
actually, because on the one hand, we've been talking about some things that that just keep going. And so keep here we're talking about social media, technology, AI, virtual reality, these kinds of things, which potentially uh, don't lead in a healthy direction without some kind of deeper inner life for
Hmm.
people. They substitute for that. So on that side, there's not a lot stopping this kind of technological development. And in fact, Palantir, surveillance systems, all this stuff is it's just
Oh,
continuing. It's continuing. On the other hand, I'm actually optimistic
yeah.
because these things that we're talking about, whether it's breaking through the materialistic deception or it's alchemical light work, are really fundamental to who we are as human beings. And they are how people, they are pointing to how people can flourish and how nature can flourish and how culture can flourish. And we go through these challenging periods. Yes, there's a challenging period here coming up. But on the other side of that, I'm actually optimistic. This is ultimately an optimistic book because
Hmm.
it's a book that is about creating cultures of light, illuminated cultures, which has happened in the past. It's happening now. It will happen in the future because this is part of what it means to be fully human. And that's what this book is really
Truly
about.
is.
And so it isn't as though these different alchemical traditions are just going to disappear and there's just going to be a black hole. The culture, the symbols, the images, the texts, the traditions, the living traditions continue to this day and they continue into the future.
Yeah, there was this reminds me of a movie probably 10, 10, 15 years ago. It had Bruce Willis and it was called Surrogates. I don't know if you ever saw that. And where a majority of society had learned how to download themselves into a Android. So they're actually the humans are still alive, but they have a headset on and they're tapped in, and so they're just living their lives in the external world through these surrogate androids. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. But in the same city, there was a no tech culture who didn't allow any of that technology into it. And I'm like, that I can actually see happening, where you're going to have these two divisions. So you're either this or you're that. Now, my philosophy is that you can have this and that and that and that and that and that. You can have multiple choices. You have a choice. Everyone has a choice. What I see now, um, which is greater than it has been in the past, is that they think they're making a choice, but they're really not. They're just being directed in a on a certain path. They're not choosing that path because they don't understand that they actually have the freedom to have choices. With a lot of, as what you were talking about with Palantir and some of these other technological things that are happening, I look at them and I explain to other people that, I've been around. I'm like, I says, this is not only the taking away a person's choice or trying to, but it's the um, elimination of choices, slowly eliminating those choices, and to where it's like you're going to go down one path and that's it. If not, you're not going to have access to your digital money. You're not going to have access to your new real ID. You're not going to have access to, you know, whatever government benefits there may be or may not be, hard to say. Maybe travel. You won't have a passport because you're not plugged into the system. And I mean, this type of behavior started um, decades ago when, counties and states said that you have to be plugged into the system. You have to be on the power grid. You can't live off of the power grid. And I'm like, why would that be so important? Isn't that somebody else's choice? But it was just a slowly pushing people to, well, we're going to take away your choice. And with what you're doing, which I love, is the fact that it reinforces the fact that you have choices, because that's all alchemy is.
Well, it's really interesting what you're talking about, because one of the things that the book points toward is the idea of culture as decentralized or localized. It's connected to a particular place.
Hmm.
So, if you think about, for instance, Japanese culture is directly manifesting in these islands in Japan in specific ways on specific islands. It's specific. There are specific Shinto shrines that are the shrines are dedicated to specific spirits that are linked to the place. And so that it has existed, it exists now.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting in relation to what we're talking about to recognize that it is possible. And you do see the development of eco villages, eco communities, small communities emerging. There are a couple in Costa Rica I'm familiar with, for example. But one of the things that you don't often see in these communities is a kind of spiritual awareness or recognizing that there's a larger map, a kind of terrain that a community can navigate, which is it again coming out of a essentially materialistic worldview. In other words, if we have an eco village that is coming out of and a refuge from a materialistic society, and it replicates the materialistic premises of the materialistic society, how much of an alternative is it? Uh, an interesting question. The other thing I would say is, uh, not far from where I live, I live in rural countryside, and not too far from here, there are communities now that have separated from the larger system, and they're flourishing. They're doing very, very well. One is Amish. So the Amish
Hmm.
have existed
Yes.
for a very long time.
Right.
Uh, we go up and visit with the Amish fairly regularly.
Hmm.
And there are communities within, half an hour of here, 20 minutes, that are flourishing. There's a Mennonite community that has
Hmm.
made a different kind of peace with the mechanical world. They have a different approach to the world of machines and technology than the Amish. These are all existing now, and
Right.
so and continue to exist. And so it's not what I'm suggesting is not Luddite in the sense of uh, simply rejecting all technology. That's not what I'm saying in the
Right.
book. But
Hmm.
what I'm saying is that we need a different way of seeing how to flourish in the world. And if we simply go with what is given to us by the system, uh, as you're suggesting by your earlier remarks, with some, is the kind of the default. If we go with the default mode, which is we're on our phone all the time. We exist in a totally materialistic world where death is just nothing. We see death as simply a black hole after life.
Hmm.
That is very closely tied to materialism. It's nihilism, a belief in nothing. So
Hmm.
materialism and nihilism are very closely linked. And if that's your worldview, then it's a pretty empty world.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And
Right.
that's what these books are really about.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, even modern medicine has shown that the people who live alone die earlier. People who don't have some sort of a community contact generally will get sicker more than anyone else. Simply because your biology or our biology, is reactive to the environment that it's in.
Right.
And that doesn't even take into consideration where what's going to happen with your mind. They say that people who are kind of hermits and they live alone, they are, I don't know, chances of going having dementia increase, tenfold. It's just because they're simply not stimulating their minds. And we all need that stimulation. I think whether it be stimulating your mind or stimulating your body in one way or another. I'm a big, proponent of, people getting out there and just moving, move your body. I mean, it's a form of alchemy. I mean, just get out there and move and preferably you can get out there and move within nature. I work with a lot of business executives. I'm just like, and they're just like, I'm stuck here and I'm stuck here and I'm stuck here. And I said, you know what? I just want you to go find, do you have a park by your house? And they're like, yeah. And I said, go to the park and just walk in the park, you know, and don't just walk. Don't have a headset on. No, don't take any technology. Bring your phone with you, but don't be on your phone. Just walk through the park and such, touch a tree, sit next to a tree, listen to hopefully maybe there's some water, some moving water. I said, just go out there and just move in nature and get reconnected. Hopefully, if it's warm, take your shoes off, get yourself grounded. And it's amazing what people will come back and report to me. Like, I feel so different. I'm tingly. I'm like, yeah. I says, you are. Now, how about those problems you were having? I figured them out.
Mhm.
I'm like, there you go. You just needed to really unplug what you thought was what you've been told is the answer, being your computer, your phone, whatever the case, really wasn't the case.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
right.
you were the solution. And that's how I look at alchemy is that we can become our own solution. And with the advent of AI, like you were discussing earlier, that's concerning because oh, I won't, I don't need to remember. I don't have to remember. I don't have to think about this. I'll just type in my question and it'll give me my answer. It's like, well, let me tell you something. And again, you and I, we have this contrast. 20 years ago, I had a lot of phone numbers memorized in my head, and now they're just, they're on my phone. What's your mom's phone number? Star one. That's it. So it's that slow degradation of the whether it be the mind or the body that it's happening so slow that people just aren't noticing it.
Yeah. It's interesting too when we rely on technology. You're absolutely right about phone numbers, for example. And
Hmm. Or
uh,
calculators, your calculators.
yeah, yeah, you figure numbers in your head. Um,
Hmm.
it's quite a different experience,
Yeah.
and uh, it's a skill, it's a capacity that you have to practice and develop. And if you don't, then you don't actually have that ability anymore. At the same time, I was not long ago, I was wondering what happened to this former colleague of mine uh, from years ago. So I did a search, and it's the search. I don't use Google, but the search engine I use, it anonymizes searches, but it presents the initial with result with an AI summary. So the AI summary said, this gentleman is dead. He died. We can't find the obituary, but he's dead. And so I thought, that's odd. I'm going to just dig a little further. And I found his website, and he's posting stuff. He's not dead at all. And that has happened twice. That's happened twice with
Yeah.
this, So here you've got, I want to, track somebody down from the past and, reconnect. And, the AI is telling me this individual is dead. This individual is not dead, actually,
Yeah.
it turns out. Uh, my point here is that the technology itself, it presents itself as your friend. It presents itself as accurate, and it is neither of those things, but it's
Right.
very insidious. One of the things, and this is in the news now, is that the AI agents tend to flatter people,
Hmm.
and the deeper you go with it, the more flattering it is. It begins to know what you want to hear, and so that's what it
Right.
tells you.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear something that is actually um, fundamentally schizophrenic, it'll confirm that. It
Hmm.
will flatter you with that, and there are cases of this. So
Right.
my point is that we need to, just as in the story you told about, an executive who doesn't want to um, get away from
Disconnect.
the phone and the machinery. Once we do that, uh, insights can come to us from a much deeper place, and we're much more able to see things accurately.
Hmm.
Whereas a lot of this technology, and especially AI, actually can present completely false answers and flatter us in a direction that is not a healthy direction.
Correct.
So we need to be very aware of that and reflect on it. And I think that's part of what this book is about, especially at the beginning, to draw people toward how to reflect on these things and also how to orient ourselves and to recognize that there's a larger path, that there's not just a black hole at the end of life, as it were, but
Hmm.
rather there's a path that actually goes beyond the confines of this life, and that's true, really, of all these religious traditions that I mentioned. That's true of Taoism. It's true of Buddhism, certainly. It's true of Hinduism. It's true of Christianity. All these
Well, there's
traditions.
there's I was again working with someone, and there's actually a AI religion kind of starting to brew online.
Yeah, I'm
And
familiar with that.
based on what you were just saying, though, it's because people were saying it's so insightful, and it just knew exactly what I was thinking, and it just, and I'm just like, I was stunned, but yet not surprised. I'm like, well,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
there's certain personality types are going to just go towards this. They're just, and it's gonna, and if it just says the exact what the one sentence that they need to hear, then they're done. And that will be their God, if you want to use that terminology. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I'd love to have another call with you and specifically just talk specifically about AI. You seem to be kind of on that cutting edge of seeing not the technology aspect of it, but again, the societal aspect of it. It would be a really deep conversation. So, my friend, it's already been an hour. That's how time flies.
Hard to
So,
believe.
yeah, when you're having fun. So, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find the book. I've got a lot of the links, and they'll be in the description. But give everybody a one last plug as far as the name of the book, where they can find it, maybe some of your other books too, because as I said, I've been already researching some of the other ones. I'm like I just bought one this morning, so
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really enjoy writing and exploring, and
I could tell.
exploration is essential to what I do. I like to explore new topics and areas that people haven't explored
Hmm.
before. And so I have books like American Gurus and American Gnosis, which are academic books, but
Hmm.
pretty wild topics in there. I will tell you, there's
Yeah,
some mind-blowing,
I'm looking forward to
mind-blowing
it.
material.
And then you have another one called Sacred Earth, and then the Secret History
That's
of
right.
Western Sexual Mysticism.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those are books from inner traditions.
Hmm.
And then Alchemical Lightwork is the most recent book from inner traditions, which is available online. If you get it through Simon and Schuster, which is their distributor, then it goes directly. That's their more of a direct way to purchase than through Amazon.
Hmm.
But these books are all available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and so
Hmm.
forth. So uh, those are easily found. Alchemical Lightwork. And breaking through the materialistic deception. And then, of course, Institute is a nonprofit devoted to the sacred in modern life. And people are welcome to stop by and investigate that as well.
Cool. All right. Well, Professor, it's been an absolute honor talking with you. And you're a book man, so when that next book is ready to go out, you've got my email. Send me a message, and you got my phone. You can call me too. And but I was very serious, so I'd really love to do another interview with you. This is fascinating.
It was a great
You're
conversation. Thank you. Really
you're
appreciate it.
just the guy I was looking for. So perfect. All right, my friend, you
Perfect.
have a great one, and it's been a pleasure. Everyone else, we'll see you next week. Bye bye. Take care.
Goodbye. Thank you.